Okay, let's dive right into this. India just went through one of the most massive legal overhauls in its history, leaving those old colonial-era codes in the dust for a completely modernized criminal justice system. Now, if you've been following the news, you've probably seen a ton of complex jargon thrown around lately. But in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all that noise. We're looking at the exact architecture of these new laws, how they fit together, and honestly, what they actually mean for you and me on a daily basis.
Picture this. You're just walking down the street, and in a split second, someone sprints by and snatches your phone right out of your hand. It's frustrating, and it's an incredibly common scenario. But if that happens today, how does the law actually handle it? Well, to answer that, we have to look at three brand new, kind of intimidating legal acronyms: the BNS, the BNSS, and the BSA. Don't let the letters overwhelm you, though. By the end of this explainer, you're going to see exactly how these three separate pieces work together to form one cohesive system to handle that exact phone snatching scenario.
So, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the blueprint, then break down the BNS rulebook, the BNS procedure, the BSA's rules of evidence, and finally, we'll see the whole machine in action.
Section 1. The blueprint. The absolute most important thing to grasp right off the bat is that we really shouldn't look at these laws as competing ideas, but rather as interlocking parts.
Think of this new Indian legal system like a giant, highly efficient three-part machine. A crime happens, and boom! Three distinct gears immediately start turning. First, you've got the BNS, which steps in to actually define the crime itself. Then, the BNSS gear kicks in, setting the strict rules for how the police and the courts process that crime. And finally, the BSA gear turns, establishing the exact rules for proving what happened in a courtroom. They completely depend on one another. If one gear gets stuck, the whole machine stops. But when they work together, that's how justice moves forward.
Section 2. The BNS. Let's zoom in on that first gear, which is basically the ultimate rulebook of crimes and punishments.
So for over a century, India relied on the Indian Penal Code, the IPC. Well, that old law is completely gone now, replaced by the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or the BNS. To put it simply, in plain English for the layman, you can literally just think of the BNS as the rulebook.
When something goes wrong, this is the book that everyone, everyday citizens and law enforcement alike, opens up to answer one core fundamental question. Wait, is this action actually illegal, and what's the punishment if you do it? The BNS defines specific offenses. We're talking theft, fraud, assault, kidnapping, cybercrimes, murder, the whole works. And it sets the exact jail time or fine for every single one of them.
So what's the real game changer here? Let's bring back our phone snatching scenario. Under the old system, street-level snatching often fell into this weird gray area between general theft and robbery. But the BNS, it now specifically defines snatching as a distinct, entirely separate offense. That is a massive update for everyday street crime. But there's more. For minor offenses like small-time theft, judges can now formally order community service instead of jail time. On the heavier side of things, organized crime and terrorism are officially defined in explicit detail within the main criminal code for the very first time. That makes prosecuting gang operations and cyber terrorism so much clearer. Oh, and hit-and-run drivers who flee an accident? Stiffer penalties there for sure.
Let's move to our next gear and see how this builds. Section 3, the BNSS, which acts as the police and courts manual.
Just like the BNS kicked out the IPC, the old Code of Criminal Procedure, the CRPC has been entirely replaced by the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, or the BNSS. If the BNS is the rulebook, the BNSS is the literal how-to manual for the police and courts. It sets the ground rules for making arrests, filing complaints, getting bail, running investigations, you name it.
The core question this procedural manual answers is, how does an investigation actually happen, step by step? Let's ground this in reality again. Your phone was just snatched. The crime is committed, and the BNS says it's definitely illegal. But what do you, the victim, actually do next? How do the police handle it from the second you call them?
This is where the BNSS totally changes the victim's experience. Step 1. You can now file what's called a zero FIR. This means you can walk into absolutely any police station to file your initial complaint, regardless of where the phone snatching actually happened. The police are legally required to register it and transfer it. No more running around town looking for the right jurisdiction. Step 2. When police investigate, they are now required to use audio and video recording for searches and seizures at crime scenes. Talk about bringing some much-needed transparency to the process. In Step 3, strict mandatory deadlines. For instance, once a trial ends, judges have exactly 45 days to deliver their judgments, so no more waiting years in limbo just to hear a final verdict.
And this modernization goes even deeper into our daily lives. The BNSS allows for digital EFIRs. That means you can report certain minor incidents digitally without ever stepping foot inside a police station. Plus, there are brand new special protection limits regarding when women, senior citizens, or sick individuals can be summoned to a station. It's a very clear effort to make the procedural side of the law more accessible and way more sensitive to vulnerable groups.
All right, so we've got the rulebook and we have the procedure. Now we arrive at the final gear of our justice machine. Section 4, the BSA, detailing the rules of evidence.
The colonial-era Indian Evidence Act has officially been replaced by the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam, the BSA. Once you are actually in the courtroom, this is the book that answers the crucial question, what actually counts as valid proof today? It establishes exactly what documents, witness statements, physical items, or expert opinions a judge is legally allowed to accept.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the BSA drags the legal system straight into the 21st century. Digital evidence is now on equal footing with paper. We are talking text messages, emails, WhatsApp chats, server logs, phone recordings, location data. They all carry the exact same legal weight as traditional paper documents. Going back to our phone snatcher, if a nearby CCTV camera caught the act, or if your phone's GPS data tracked the snatcher's escape route, that digital data can now be directly submitted as primary evidence in court.
The BSA also forces some serious scientific rigor into the mix for major crimes. For any offense carrying a punishment of 7 years or more, forensic experts are now legally required to visit the crime scene to properly collect DNA, fingerprints, and physical traces. It also modernizes witness safety by explicitly allowing video conferencing for testimony. That means witnesses don't always have to put themselves at risk by physically appearing in a courtroom to testify.
We've looked at all the individual parts. Now, for Section 5, the machine in action, putting it all together.
It is time to bring all three laws together to see the complete picture of this legal overhaul. Let's do a rapid-fire synthesis using the exact scenario we started with, snatching a phone on the street. Watch how these gears actually interlock.
And this brilliantly illustrates the entire modernized architecture of Indian criminal law in one single view. First, you asked the BNS gear, is this illegal? The BNS answers, yep, snatching a phone is now a specifically defined offense carrying up to 3 years in prison. Then the gear turns to the BNSS. How do police handle it? The BNSS answers, the victim can file a 0 FIR anywhere. The police must log it, they have to video record the site, and the courts must wrap up the trial on strict timelines. Finally, the gear turns to the BSA. How do we prove it? The BSA answers, those CCTV videos and GPS phone logs you collected, they are directly submissible as primary legal evidence. The rulebook, the procedure, and the evidence all seamlessly working together.
This framework isn't just a proposal anymore. It is the new reality of the law. The shift from the old IPC, CRPC, and Evidence Act to the modern BNS, BNSS, and BSA is designed to be faster, more digital, and heavily focused on the victim's experience. But look, a system is only ever as effective as the people who use it. So, I leave you with this final thought. As the gears of this new legal machine begin to turn, how quickly will everyday citizens adapt to and actually utilize this modernized justice system? Because understanding these laws is step one. Using them to protect your rights is what comes next. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.